Commerce. We're glad to have all of you here with us this morning, and those of you watching by Channel 3, we're also happy to have you with us this morning. Our guest this morning includes Senator Jack Johnson, our senator from the 23rd District, State Representatives Charles Sargent, Glen Casada, and Jeremy Durham. And gentlemen, we're very glad to have you all with us again this morning for our wrap-up show. Very surprised we're having it this early, but you can tell us more about that here in just a few minutes. Our first item of business this morning is a special presentation. One of our chamber members, the Rock City Construction Company, is just recently completed 100 years in business. And Glenn, you're got something for them, and if you gentlemen want to meet him at the podium,
and John, come up.
We will love to have y'all make that presentation. Find a mic if you would, and
Speak into it. Thank you.
Yeah.
John, I just want to congratulate you. This is a resolution passed by the General Assembly and signed by, oh, thank you. So here's what I need to do. Put my eyes on before I even get started. But the delegation, Jack sponsored this in the Senate, and Jeremy and I and Charles sponsored this in the House. We took it through the committee system. It is passed. The governor and the speaker signed this, and it commemorates you, your family, your 100 years of contribution to our community. And just some little side notes about John. 2013 was when the company was started.
No,
Was
1913.
what I say? 20.
This is our first year anniversary.
Thank you. Like I said, that's a politician math. That's how we balance the budget. With that said, John, this company, his grandfather started, his father continued. Now you're doing it. 101 years to be exact. You have the second construction license in the state of Tennessee. Number 2 was given to Rock City. The other important thing is all the projects you have done over the years. We've listed this in the resolution, but do you want to share one or two of the things that you guys have worked on?
We built this building we're in now.
Yes.
And we added on to it about a dozen times and remodeled it 3 or 4 times. We renovated the state capitol in the 50s, and have done several other smaller jobs there. Did the tunnel to it.
Yes.
Built what's now the old municipal auditorium, and several other buildings that are on the historic register.
Oak Ridge?
Yeah,
We
we were part of the Manhattan project.
Yes, profound. And this is why it's neat to commemorate this, because it is the not only jobs and creation of jobs and wealth, but it's what you've added to our community and to our state and to our nation. And thank you for that service, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know these other guys want to say something too, but I just want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, would you like to introduce some of the other gentlemen that are a part of Rock City here with you this morning?
Okay. There's Fred Reynolds, who's Vice President, and back there's Bill Young, who's the Executive Director of AGC of Tennessee.
Great. We're very glad to have you all with us this morning, and extremely proud to have a chamber member last 100 years, and not only glad, I should say, succeed for 100 years and make us proud that way. Thank you very much. Glenn, we appreciate your taking the lead on that and doing that. One other announcement that I'd like to make, a couple of other announcements I'd like to mention before we get started with our budget presentation this morning, but one other activity that the Public Affairs Committee of the Chamber has decided to undertake is a series of quarterly meetings called the Public Affairs Council meetings. Our first one is on May 8th. It will be at 7:30 in the morning, 7:30 till 9, and it will be held at the Lipscomb Spark campus over on Cool Springs Boulevard near Aspen Grove. And the topic of our first session is going to be Roads to the Future, addressing the current and future infrastructure needs of our county. Many of you have probably noticed that we do have some infrastructure challenges, primarily to do with traffic, and we are going to start a discussion from the Chamber's point of view on what we might be able to do about some of the issues that our growth is presenting us, and how to get ahead of those instead of taking a chance on getting behind the 8 ball there and not dealing with those maybe as well as we could. Our speaker that day is going to be Michael Skipper. He is the director of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is the organization created by the federal government to help distribute federal funds for roads in Middle Tennessee, roads and transit. And we're interested to hear his presentation and find out what we look like from the metropolitan point of view as far as our infrastructure and needs are. Also, since our next meeting here is our regular date would be on Memorial Day, our tentative plan at this time is to move to a Tuesday instead of a Monday that week to May 27th. And part of our plan to deal with everything that has gone on this year in the state legislature is to deal with budget and other issues today, and to put all the education issues on the table at our next meeting. And a little bit concerned, I just found out Glen is going to be out of town that week, and that's not a good thing. So that's why I said tentative. But we do want to deal with all the great things that happened from an education perspective, as far as, and as well as some of the other questions that were raised during the session this year. Today, we've got plenty to talk about. If you just take education off the table, there are hundreds of other things we could talk about. But one thing that we haven't spent much time on this show talking about is the budget. And Jack, without ignoring your seniority here as a senator, I'm going to ask Charles to give us an update as much as possible on the kind of things that went on with the budget, how we dealt with was it a $270 million deficit? And so Charles, if you would lead off and give us the
a point of order, Dave. The Senate is the lower body. Just don't forget that.
Is that right?
You just wanted to make it correct.
No, I'm sorry. I have to take issue with that. We are the upper chamber, and but
the upper chamber and the lower body.
But I will say this though.
Thank you for that clarifying statement,
Dave. I take no offense at all. If you look, certainly based on hair color, Charles is the senior member of our delegation. So.
I just know that he is the chairman of the House Finance Committee, and works very hard on getting a budget pulled together with the governor, and he seemed to be the one to call on for this subject. So
I'll let the others.
Go ahead, Charles.
Thanks, Jack. It was an interesting year, and let me start. Maybe I can start back in February, the first week of February. The governor at that time, November, December, they were working on their budget. In February, he did the State of the State address. And at that time, we knew when he gave his budget, we were down about $120 million. At that time, he did promise, well, he said he didn't really promise. He would like to give the teachers a 2% pay raise and the state employees a 2% pay raise. So that was the first presentation of a budget. Then every year we go back and we refine some of those numbers. Well, we fast forward about 6 weeks later, because of our franchise excise tax, we were down another $150 million. So all of a sudden, and it took a nosedive straight down, and normally it doesn't fluctuate that much on the franchise excise. Our sales tax have been basically stable, and they haven't fluctuated. They're down 1 or 2/10 of 1%. So that's been a very stable. Everything's been stable except for the franchise excise tax. So then, now we're back down $276 million in the hole, which accounted to about a 2.4% reduction overall. So as we go through our budget hearings, we have every department come in. There's 50, all 23 commissioners, and then when you look at higher education and all those people, there's about 53 budgets that we actually go through. And then we just have to go back and look at what reserve accounts they have, what revisions we can make to settle this year's budget, because it's a double-fold problem with $277 million in this year 13-14 in the hole, which automatically makes us $277 million for 14-15 in the hole. So basically our total budget this year for 14-15 is $32.4 billion. This was basically a 2.4% reduction of what we had in 13-14. 13-14, our budget was $33.2 billion. This coming year, is $32.4. That's $800 million, but a lot of that is federal money also. So, but the state dollars was actually $276 million. So, we just go through the budget process, and at the time, the governor, he regretted that he couldn't give the 2% and the 1% raise. But it was also not a time, since we were 277 in the hole, that we could spend another $75 million on raises. So the governor had to come back and say that we could not do the raises this year. But there's a lot of good things that happen in the budget. When we look at raises, we were able to pick up, almost every year, health insurance goes up. So your employees, they're paying 20% of the bill. The state picks up 80, they pick up 20. Well, we picked up their 20% increase this year in their premium. So a lot of times when we give no raise, they actually take a decrease in salary because their insurance premiums go up. So this year, that was about, counting the state portion and the employees portion, there was about $24 million ticket just on premium increases for this year. So we decided, since we weren't going to give raises, that we also we would cover their cost of their insurance. So that's offset. That's usually about 0.3% raise almost. So overall, we did some things that were very painful, but when you're looking at a $32 billion budget, you can find different funds available. One thing we did also with our state employees, since we were not given a raise, we have a 401, and we match. State law says we have to match up to $30, but for the last several years, we've been doing $50 per employee per month. So we continued on with the $50 match. So we didn't give them a raise, but yet on the other hand, we did pick up their insurance costs, and we continued on with their 401 match. This is the first time in legislative history that we know of that we did not do any legislative, or I'll call it legislative initiatives. At the end of the year, we always have, quote, quote, a pot of money that we can use either to fund help with the Carter House or help with the Polk House. I know a couple of years ago we gave them money, and different projects throughout the state that we normally do. This year we did absolutely no projects, neither the House nor the Senate. Everyone out there, when I said legislative initiative, most people call this the pork projects. We did none this year, the first time that they know of that no initiatives have been taken care of. Okay. So it was a very hard year, but yet I think with the governor and the administration and the House and Senate, I worked very closely with Randy McNally, who's the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and we just sat down and worked it out, and, you know, if you're in development disabilities, you know, they've taken a little bit of a hit. All the departments have, but nothing that really, I think, ruined a department or is going to have a lasting impact that's really going to hurt. I mean, it's just one of these things you have to go almost line item by line item. And when you're looking at a $32 billion budget, that's a long process.
So what would you say the top 3 cuts were in the budget, Charles?
Well, we did higher ed took a cut. Besides your payroll, that was 70-something million. Higher ed took a substantial cut. We did not fund. We have a program that we started 3 years ago to fully fund higher ed, and we did not implement that. This was the 3rd year, so we just skipped this 3rd year, and that was probably at a cost of about $40 to $50 million. I don't have the exact dollar in front of me. Those would be your 2 big things. Medicare, we still have to expand. We fully funded the BEP as far as
BEP?
Better Education Program.
Thank you.
And, excuse me, we fully funded that, but we cut the growth BEP, which basically affects Williamson County. The growth BEP, that was cut by $12 million. It was $27 million. We cut it down to $15 million. Okay. We actually cut it down more than that, but we got $5 million more. But that's what Williamson County gets paid for our new students that are coming in.
Right.
As you know, we're growing 800, 1,000 students per year.
Right.
And this is money on those students. We don't get the money until the back end, almost a year later.
Right.
So this is what funds the growth. And several years ago, I passed a bill that they had to fully fund it. This got cut. But like for Williams County, it's, you know, they're still getting 60% of the money instead of 100%. Right. They're going to get 60. So there were just, throughout the budget, we just had to go through and make decisions on what to do. But there's a lot of good things in the budget. Right. Janet Smith, president of the Columbia State, we were able to get the funding this year. Now, this is a bond, so it doesn't come. $37.5 million to build Columbia State. I think she's probably maybe like it up to the mic and announce we're going to do some ground moving in May, and then in August we're going to have actually, I should let her announce all that, but so we're very happy. You know, this is something that's been going on. Dr. Smith, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but
that's all right,
let's
Charles.
take a.
You deserve it. You can steal every bit of it because I am most grateful to you.
Tell us a little bit about that, Dr. Smith.
All right. First off, I'd like to express my appreciation to the delegation, and particularly to Representative Sargent for the ongoing, dedicated, hard work that they have done to make sure that this project occurs. And to give a little history, it has gone on for many years. In year 2000, is work prior to that, but in 2000, the master plan for the campus was completed, or the first master plan was, and work really diligently began at that time trying to secure this facility. And then in 2010, Mary Kate was with us, and we began to have individuals show us property and talk about property. In 2011, a piece of property, the property we now own, came available. And it came available very quickly, and we had to move on it very quickly. And Representative Sargent went to the state and was able to obtain the funds to purchase that piece of property. And getting that piece of property, I think, was another biggie in moving the project forward. And since then, we were on the state list and working to move up the state list, and we were hopeful last year, but there was some little issues with funding and so forth, so we waited our time, and then this year we received the funds. And I thank you all very, very much, and Charles, I'm very, very much thankful to you and your ongoing dedication to this project. Now, what's going on with the project. This is the fun stuff.
Give us
We've
the
been
dates.
working for the past year with our architect. We have the architectural drawings have basically completed. We have been working with our construction firm, which last year we went out on bids and the construction firm was identified. It is in pre-bid at this time, so we've got pre-bids coming in so we can line everything up to move forward. We, as Charles stated, the funding came through, and to kind of give you an idea of where that funding is, last year we went in and we have to raise 10%, approximately $4 million. And so we found a way to backfill that. So last year we had the funds to begin with the construction company and with our architect to get everything together. We're backfilling more before June 30 so that we can begin to move dirt in May and June, end of May, 1st of June. We should be in there beginning our first dirt moving, in which we plan to have the media out and celebrate that part. In August, August 15th is our tentative time, mark it on your calendar, for the big groundbreaking, in which we will truly celebrate what's going on. And then if all goes well, we know what construction occurs, but all goes well, in January of 2016, it should be completed. We plan on moving into the new campus spring break of 2016. We pick up what we've got, move it over, work out any final bugs, and then go full force in August of 2016 and have our big celebration of the grand opening at that time. The project itself, including the land that has been purchased prior to, and additional funds that we look to receive from the sale of the building we are now to purchase furniture and do some other things on the campus, will be somewhere around a $41 million, $42 million project overall. And that in and of itself is just an economic contributor to the county and to the city and the cities of the area. But the biggest asset, and I think the thing that I would say to you gentlemen to take home and to be extremely proud of, is that when you build an educational institution, you do not build something that gives economic impact for 1 year, for 2 years, but for your lifetime and the lifetime of those who come after you. You change lives with this. You change the life of every student who walks through that door and how that student interacts with others. And it goes from that student to that student's children, to their children, to their children, and to their children. When we build an educational institution, we do not build something that lasts for 10 years, 50 years, but we're looking at hundreds plus. So from those students who will enter that building and who will receive an education that will change their lives, and to those who come after them, on behalf of them, I say thank you, because it would not have occurred without you all, and particularly Representative Sargent and your dedication to this project. So thank you very much. I will let you know as we have our first site news conference on it, and then as we have the groundbreaking, and I do hope you're there to help celebrate it, because it is a day that this community has a new college to work with. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and I hope next month when we are more focused on education, you'll come back and tell us a little bit about the specific opportunities that's going to present to the children and adults of Williamson County. I know in my family's case, Columbia State has made a tremendous difference in my oldest son's college experience already. He will be graduating from high school, knock on wood, here in a few days, and he will have 30 college hours done through Columbia State when he graduates from high school, which is huge. And we are so thankful to have that facility and that institution here in our county. And y'all do so many other things, but I'm really proud of what you've been able to do for our family. I'm sorry, Charles, let's
No, okay.
focus back and then,
I mean, I can go through a lot of different, but talking about higher ed and Columbia State and our technical centers, this year we put $10 million in the budget for competitive bids for locals for a tech centers and a Columbia State to match the equipment that they need for an area. Where you go down to Tullahoma to a tech center down there, they may need a lot of shop equipment. Here, we'd be just the opposite. We would probably need a lot of computers and things of that nature. So we have a $10 million grant in there for all our higher educations to align their campus with the workforce. Because this is something we're going to have to get into doing and be very conscious of, because what I know here in Middle Tennessee, there are several thousand medical IT jobs opened.
Right.
Well, that wouldn't be the same, say, in Polk County or Winchester or something like that. Right. So we're trying to align our schools with the workforce and the companies in that area. So that's a very important initiative that we're going forward with.
right,
And we did put our 5% commitment into the rainy day fund. As you know, we have a statutory requirement that we have to put 5% into the rainy day fund, and we did do that this year. The last couple of years, we've been putting more than the 5%. This year, we cut it back and only put the 5% in that fund. But I mean, without taking the whole show, I got other colleagues here.
right.
I mean, that's a good overview. I mean, I can go with any particular thing.
We could spend hours on this.
Well,
I can
usually when
tell.
I present the budget on the House floor, it takes me about 3.5 hours. So yes, with questions and everything, we can spend a lot of time.
Newt would cut us off before we did that.
I understand.
Jack, I want you to, from your point of view and the Senate point of view, give us any highlights that you want to about the budget, and then Glenn and Jeremy will.
Yeah, I think it's important that we talk about, we get asked a lot, why were we $276 million in the hole? And as Charles articulated, that's current fiscal year. That's based on the budget we passed last year for fiscal 13-14. And the way our process works, if our budget is based every year on revenue projections. So we project what our sales tax collections will be, our franchise excise tax, business tax, and so forth. And then our budget must balance based on those projected numbers. And we're very conservative with our projections. We don't play games and estimate that our revenue is going to grow by 8% so we can spend more money. We used very, very conservative growth. It's somewhere around the neighborhood of 3% is what we estimated, or that the funding board projected that our revenue would grow by. That where our shortfall came was not so much in sales tax revenue and other revenue. As Charles said, it was specifically with franchise excise tax. And a lot of folks that are watching may say, well, what is that tax, or who pays that tax? And that's a corporate tax. That's a tax that is assessed on businesses. And there are really two corporate taxes that play into this. One is franchise excise tax. We call it F&E tax, and the other is a business tax. The business tax is basically a gross receipts tax. It's based on your gross receipts that you collect into your business. The franchise excise tax is based on your net worth or the value of your tangible property that you have within your business, or a capital. If you're a corporate type, it'd almost be like a value of the stock of your company, and it's really a very small percentage of that. And then the other part, you got franchise/excise tax, and then the excise portion is a very small tax on your overall net income. Where the bulk of the shortfall came was in this franchise excise tax. And what we're finding is, while Tennessee, we love to brag about the fact that Tennessee is a very tax-friendly state, we're one of the lowest tax states in the nation, we love to trumpet that, and we should. But on the franchise excise tax portion of it, we're not quite as competitive with some of our neighboring states. And I think, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but roughly, you all heard the 80-20 rule, you get 80% of your revenue from 20% of your clients and so forth. Well, this one is almost like a 95-5. We get roughly 95% of this revenue, or 90% from 10, or 95% from 5 of the companies. And there's no secret who some of those are. FedEx and Cracker Barrel and Dollar General, very large companies that are domiciled in the state of Tennessee. And quite frankly, what they've done is found legal ways, and I emphasize the word legal ways, to avoid the tax. It's the same thing we do with our personal tax returns. We take all the deductions and exemptions we can get. And we had one very large distributor in Memphis that simply moved their distribution center right across the state line into Mississippi. Now, Mississippi has a state income tax, and they're not as tax-friendly in some other ways, but it made sense for this distributor, our distribution center of this particular company, to move it to Mississippi. And it was a big hit. And anecdotally, you can take that across the state. So I lay that out to say this is a problem we have in the state of Tennessee. This isn't just a one-off situation we have with this particular tax. I really think it's something that's here to stay. So we're going to have to figure out a way to either close the loopholes or tighten it up a little bit so we don't have this problem next year and the year after.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that color.
And I want to give an example, a bill that Jack and I and delegation passed this year. We worked very diligently with the Department of Revenue, and I probably shouldn't give the name of the company, but this company has 22 employees here in Williamson County. They are a wholesale natural gas company, not the retail side, a wholesale natural gas company. And they have 22 employees, high-paid employees, and they hold wholesale gas throughout, and they buy natural gas out of Louisiana, Texas, and they'll bring it in here to the state of Tennessee, and they'll sell it to the Eastmans and the Nissans, your big companies.
Right.
That under federal law, the crazy part, they have to take ownership of this product.
Right.
Because they want to know if a gas line blows up, whose gas it is, and everything of that nature. If you can imagine, it'd be like taking FedEx, and everything FedEx moves in that plane, they would have to take ownership of and be taxed. Totally unfair.
Right.
If this company located, like I said, there are 22 employees, they could move to Huntsville, Alabama, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and they wouldn't have to pay the tax. Yeah. And this is what happened with the distribution company in Memphis. I'm saying, this is something we have to study and figure out why. So what we were able to do, basically, is lower the tax. Overall, the tax was lowered, but any companies out of state that own national gas pipeline, they have to pay the same tax.
Right.
We were letting out-of-state companies that did the same exact thing not pay the tax. So now, everyone's on a level playing field.
Yeah.
And this particular company with 22 employees right here in Franklin is staying right here in Franklin. And these employees did not want to move. They fell in love. Several of them said, we're going to leave the company if you move it out. And it's not fair to our employees. They have students that are in Brentwood High School, Ravenwood, and so we were able to change this. It took working with Finance Administration, Commissioner Roberts. We worked hours on this, trying to get this work out. And these are the things that we're going to have to look at, and on individual basis on companies and how our F&E tax is being distributed. And like Jack said, on our F&E, sales count 2 to 1. So when you look at sales being 2 to 1 of the formula,
Right.
that can change a lot. And this company was being taxed on something they didn't make a profit on.
So,
It was
so
just a pass-through. They were a logistic gas company, and
So
They
the,
didn't make
the
money.
bottom line from a businessman's standpoint is that the state's going to lose that franchise and excise tax one way or the other. Either if the tax stays the way it is, the companies are going to find ways to move part of their operations out of the state, or else we need to address the tax and adjust it so that we can keep those companies here.
and that's what we're just doing a study on it now. And a lot of times, some of the companies you think are the biggest companies, maybe not always your biggest taxpayers.
Right. Right.
I've always used, I'm going to use something what Jack said. If you looked at a $50,000 car, Nissan, Volkswagen, General Motors makes here,
Right.
you could probably maybe get 50 of those and a 747, if you stacked them right, you could probably get $50,000 cars. That's $2.5 million. If I took the same 747 and put Lipitor, which is a medicine to lower cholesterol, I could probably get $700 million worth of pharmaceuticals in the same plane. So you got to look at it. It's not the one sometimes that you're thinking of. And I'm just going to use, because no one's allowed to talk about taxpayers' information. I don't have taxpayers' information. I'm not privileged. But there's a whole study going on.
Glenn, I know you and Jeremy have both been involved in various aspects of the budget this year. How about, Glenn, if you would give us the highlights from your perspective?
Well, and the two comments I would like to make is there's a lesson for Washington, D.C. on what Tennessee does. When times are tough, we cut. Just like I do and you do on our financial household budgets, you cut back when it's tough. And this is a reason why Tennessee is rated as the best run state, the place to come and do business, most tax-friendly state, is because we manage our affairs like you manage yours at home. And it's successful. And if Washington would just follow that, I think you would find that on a national level as well. I also want to touch on kind of behind-the-scene scenarios. Charles outlaid real topically how seamless it seemed. Trust me, it was not that seamless. Matter of fact, you only got red-faced twice on the House floor. I was impressed. When the budget comes together, and let me back up just a minute, Dave. It's every member in the General Assembly has a function. Right. When it comes to commerce and insurance, Charles is the one that you go to get things done. When it comes to finance, Charles and his team, the budget subcommittee and full committee, will put together a budget. And then his job and leadership's role is to go and sell that to the caucus. And this is where Jeremy comes in. Jeremy's chairman of the freshmen, and there's 17 of them, maybe 18 the way you count one member. And so a lot of members, quite honestly, kind of initially when they saw it, did not like some of the things in the budget. Democrats fought it fiercely. They don't like cuts. They don't want to cut. I think if they wouldn't say it, but I think if they had their option, they would have raised taxes. I do think that. Several of our members thought they had better ways to do it, but you've got to trust those that you put in charge of the various parts of leadership. And Charles was magnificent, him and his committee, of putting together something that made sense for Tennessee for this year. And so I commend him and the committee and putting that together. It was hard work. There was a lot of temper tantrums and pulling of hair behind the scenes, but we always come together and we make it work. And so the citizens of the state should be proud of what we've rolled out this year.
Right. Chairman of the freshman caucus.
17
Jeremy?
of those rascals.
How did you corral them?
The best freshman position is former chair of the freshman caucus. I'm very proud of that distinction.
Not a freshman anymore, huh?
That's true. I guess we're not. One of the things Glenn said was the first thing I had written down to talk about. I know that sometimes if you look at the video on the floor, especially during the budget, it gets a little bit tense sometimes, but this was a particularly tough year because of the revenue situation. And just being in the caucus meetings, Charles was thrown into a horrible situation. You had the governor who gave the state of the state, and he thought at the time that he would be able to give teachers and state employees raises. So then people go around their districts and talk about what the governor's plan is. And then revenues were cut short, and we learned that was no longer a reality. And Charles was given the distinct task of selling that to our caucus. And I was in the caucus meeting, and I'm just glad that everybody came out with all their limbs. He did a very good job. But I want to really thank Charles for how he handled that. I actually ended up voting no on the budget, but I want to say that it was not because it wasn't fiscally responsible. I actually was going to go with Charles and them on the amendments that Matthew Hill and some of those folks were going to bring on the floor. There's really four things that I always get asked about right after we vote on the budget. Number one is are there any tax increases? They resist the urge to raise taxes. When there's $270-something million shortfall, obviously there's certain folks up there, the first thing they want to do is raise taxes. They never even thought about doing that. I thought that was great. The teachers and state employees, that was a very, very tough situation. They thought they were getting raises. We always want to show them that we appreciate them. It wasn't in the cards. When you're in the red as much as we were, it just wasn't going to happen. And I understood it. I didn't like that they were kind of told that they were going to do it, that it was going to happen. But I understood. At the same time, we have to rely on good policy, even if people were under the impression that they would get something that they didn't get. So I was with them on that. We always get asked about the hall tax, and this was probably not a year. If you're not going to give teachers raises, you probably can't do it this year. I totally understood that. But infrastructure was my thing. I thought that I was really happy that Columbia State happened. I know there'll be a lot of people, just like Dave said, who will be able to use that. But for my district, for District 65, I was really disappointed that there weren't more infrastructure projects included in the 3-year plan. That was my main reason for voting against state budget. I didn't argue against it because there were good things for Williamson County in the budget. But for my district, for District 65, specifically the Mac Hatcher project, I was disappointed that that project didn't happen, so I voted no.
Understand.
And let me say one thing about that, and that was a very big issue to Jeremy and his district, and we fully understand that. And back in January, February, that most likely was going to be in the budget. And it had nothing to do, some part of it had nothing to do with the state. The federal government has not passed their highway budget yet. On about August the 15th, they will actually run out of money. There'll be no money left in the federal highway fund, and they have to exist from August the 15th to October the 1st. Normally, these highway budgets are done over, even on the federal side, a 6-year period of time. They're going to say, we're going to fund this at so many billions of dollars, and every state knows approximately what they're going to receive. And the reason they do it over a long stretch of time, because like we're doing I-65 now at the present time, that's not going to be a 1-year project. So you cannot do 1-year funding. You have to look out in the future of 3 and 4 years. And Jeremy and I talked about this, and I understand exactly where he was coming from on it. But if the federal highway had released a budget, most likely, and Jeremy's worked very hard for this, for the district, it would have been in there. So hopefully, we do a 3-year plan, so hopefully next year, it's one of the top projects to be done. So hopefully next year, if the feds do their budget correctly, or if they even fund it, the commissioner has no idea what amount of money we're going to get on a highway budget. It's about a $1.6 billion budget. $800 million is state money. $800 million is federal money. And at this point in time, the commissioner, John Schroer, who's doing a great job, has no idea if he's going to get $100 million or $800 million. And so without that, some type of a plan, he did not want to put too many capital outlay budgets or projects out there. But I will say to the people that are watching, Jeremy fought very hard, probably at least once a week. He was saying, is it in the project? Is it in the project? And I said,
Almost obnoxious, but not quite.
And I would have said
That's where I was trying to be.
so I mean,
Quite
and everyone understands. But that's what happened. And basically, we did not get. The federal has not done their highway budget yet, and they actually physically run out of money August the 15th.
And Charles, my memory was it was every day, not every week. But anyway,
Well, it felt like twice a day sometimes.
I'm going to put in another shameless plug for our May 8th meeting on primarily transportation. If any of y'all that can be there, we'd love to have you in the discussion, because that's certainly a high priority in this county, and
we are very fortunate here. If you look at what's happening in Williamson County as far as roads are concerned, Mac Hatcher being 4-lane from Franklin Road over to 96.
Right.
I-65 is a continuation of the project. The only thing bad about that is you're going to have traffic jams and construction sites all the way for the next 2 to 3 years. It will go all the way down. I mean, it's talk about going down to Saturn Parkway, not just to 840. Franklin Road. There's a piece in there from Concord Road down to Moore's Lane.
Right.
I mean,
I want to circle back, and we're going to drill into that much deeper on May 8th. But this morning, I want to leave some time for our audience to ask questions. But I want to circle back on the franchise and excise tax. What are the options for dealing with that? How do you replace that revenue, or I mean, is there any hope, or are we just going to see the budget cut another $200 or $300 million a year? Jack?
Yeah, as I said earlier, the companies that are finding ways to avoid the tax are doing so legally. It's they're finding exemptions or deductions, or they're relocating outside of the state, or they're moving some of their operations outside of the state. And so I want to be very clear about that. There's no one that's maliciously trying to avoid tax that they're due to pay. And I'll kind of flip around. Charles was instrumental. Well, we all were, but Charles was instrumental in repealing the estate tax, the death tax, and that's another element of this, because I've had people say, well, why didn't you eliminate the death tax? Now you're $276 million in the hole. It had nothing to do with that. Yeah. That they are not mutually exclusive. Right. We've been reducing the sales tax on food. We eliminated the gift tax. We've been doing some things, and I think that this governor with the Cooperative General Assembly is trying to look 5-10 years down the road in terms of our tax structure, the things that make us competitive as a state for retirees and for businesses and so forth. And so it's not all doom and gloom. Right. Art Laffer, who advises us frequently, he does a great job of showing how our repeal of the estate tax, the death tax in Tennessee, will more than pay for itself over time. But you're probably looking at 5 to 10 years for that to catch up. Mm-hmm. We've got to do the same thing on our corporate tax side. Tennessee has many things to offer companies that might want to come to Tennessee, or companies that are located in Tennessee and are looking to expand. We've got to find ways to sell those kind of things, but at the same time have a consistent and reliable corporate tax system on the other side. To get to your direct question, Dave, I think it's a matter, and as Charles said, they're going to study this, and they're going to sit down with these companies. We don't do these things in a vacuum. We're going to sit down with some of these big companies and say, what can we do? Here's our problem, $276 million, because these companies want us to be building schools. They want us to be building the roads. They want us to be providing the infrastructure, the things that government should provide. So, and they don't mind paying the taxes. It's just got to be consistent and fair. Right. I expect that we'll come back in January with the administration really sitting down with companies and looking at this. Why are 95% of the revenues coming from 5% of the companies? Yeah. What do we need to do so that we're not in such jeopardy with such a high concentration and such a small number of employers? Right.
Glen or Jeremy, go
Another
ahead.
thing we have to do just going forward is developing a wiser fiscal policy. Like we talk about the gas tax, that's just cents per gallon. You just have to, when you're doing a tax, you can't just do a snapshot. You have to think about the next 20 years. If we had indexed the gas tax, we wouldn't be in the spot we're in right now. So some of it is just when we're enacting policy, we just have to be smart and index it.
Right. And I'd add to that, there's a couple of icebergs in the future budget-wise. Jack and Jeremy and Charles outlined well. The franchise excise. The other one that's out there is Obamacare and the health care costs. Right now, our number one budget item in the state of Tennessee is health care. And it's only going to expand. We've got approximately 55,000 that have signed up now on TennCare. One of the side effects of Obamacare, the ACA, is that it educates the citizens on the Medicaid, the state's Medicaid program that's available. And so now we have upwards of 55,000 that have signed up, new signees, because they're eligible. That has a cost. It has a large cost. And so you're going to see healthcare be a problem, a major problem once again. When I mean healthcare, I mean the funding of it. Right. And so just buckle up, folks. It's going to be interesting.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions that you would like to specifically address to our delegation this morning, would welcome you to step up to the podium. While you're stepping up, I'm going to come back to Glen in just a minute. And if in just 60 seconds, can you explain whether I can buy core seed and D now or not?
What we
since
passed.
You're our pharmaceutical representative.
Yeah, the drug seller. I'll tease Jack and say everyone needs to thank the House for the pseudoephedrine bill that came out, but I'm teasing because it was a unified vote that is now down. We're limited now to 28.7 grams of pseudoephedrine we can buy per year. Per month, which won't affect 98% of us. Those that are on it every day, 12 months a year, they will end up going to the pharmacist and explaining why they're buying it so frequently. He, in turn, will grant that prescription, if you will. And so it should not be a problem. But the governor and the Department of Safety feel very strongly that this is a way to really cut down on the production of methamphetamine in this state. So it was a good bill that we passed. I had doubts, but it's a good bill.
Okay, great. Introduce yourself and ask your question, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is John Newble. I'm recently moved in from Maryland, background in federal financial management, and I want to thank you, gentlemen, for what you do. You, compared to my experience at the federal level, you do a yeoman's job in terms of value added for very little remuneration compared to the level at the federal level. I also want to thank the legislature for passing the fiscal responsibility or balanced budget initiative. This is a major issue. If you think the 2008, 2009 downturn was a problem, hold on to your seat, because if we don't get the federal budget under control, we don't have to do it with a meat axe. You can do it with a thoughtful ratio of debt to GDP. It's been proven by the Swiss. It's been proven by the British. I can give you a whole paper on that if you'd like, on how other countries have used this to stimulate their economy, restore the confidence of investors in their economy, and get them rolling again, so we don't look at a situation where a recovery is as tepid as this one is, and it takes until the year 2020 for us to recover in terms of jobs compared to 2007. So I really would hope that you would keep your eye on the ball on that one, because it's going to take 10, we're at 24 now, we need 34. We think that by next spring we'll have 39 registered. We just got Michigan, we're working on Louisiana, and we just got Tennessee and another state, which slips my mind right now, but in the last 2 months. So momentum is building out there. Okay, don't want to take any more. Another question. Indiana, in their initiative, was very creative in bringing in money that in terms of leasing out parts of their highway system for tolls, to raise capital, to keep it modernized. And they had some Australian and some others. With interest rates as low as they are, and people looking for a safe haven, dollars, I would just throw that out as an idea for future legislature contemplation. You can the highway will be kept up by the investor. Sure, there's a price to be paid in terms of who uses it, tolls, user fees, but that puts the onus on the user rather than an across-the-board tax to pay for what they're getting. That's a very, I'm sure Art Laffer, who's a good friend of mine, would endorse that. He loves those kind of things, so do I. I think it's a good idea. Last question, just for your thought. I read in the paper, you know, when you couldn't give the teachers the pay raise. My own daughter's a teacher out in Colorado, so I know how that hurts, and it hurts. If you took your TIP thrift investment plan, the matching that you give, that you preserved, and you added to that the increment in the 80% health care, would that come anywhere near the 1%? I mean, I just don't see that in the paper, and newspaper, and I think, you know, people need to know what they get paid, and particularly when you've got a lot of your compensation in non-direct compensation, discretionary compensation framework, communicating that is very important. So I just throw that out to you as a thought. Thank you for your service again, and Jeremy, thank you for your working on Mac Hatcher. I Maybe we ought to sell, maybe we'll get that done as a toll road. Might not be a bad idea. I'd pay tolls to road on it.
Let-
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me make two comments. First, on the match on the 401 is $600 a year, $50 a month. And then if I look at the increase on the health insurance, it would be somewhere between 20, it just depends on the employee and the plan they have, $20 to $30 a month increase. So if you look at 500, let's say 250, 300, that's $800 a year. That would be over a state employee's match of pay raise of 1%. If you made $40,000, 1% would be $400. So we've already given them. So,
There you go.
but they look at it. We do it every year. Then on your highway funds, the reason we do not do, I know they just probably a quick thing on the highway fund. We have no indebtedness on our roads in the state of Tennessee. The $800 million that we get from, and you used Indiana, if you looked at their indebtedness, they're probably taking the money they get from the Fed just to pay bond, principal, and interest payments. We
We're gonna have
use
to
our
wrap,
money
gentlemen.
on a front-end basis, so that money is used for capital. We don't have a single debt on any of our roads.
I am not suggesting you go
sir.
into debt. But I am suggesting that what these funds could be used for is.
We're running short on time,
Okay, I'm
sir.
sorry. It could be used for new projects, and
Okay.
the investor has the upkeep responsibility. So you're not taking on debt. You are selling an asset.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Glenn,
sir.
I wanted to comment, I think it's the most underreported, underobserved thing is the Constitutional Convention that Tennessee is now one of 24 states. The four of us were prime forces on getting that passed. And if this federal government continues on the trend, and you take the last 5 years, if that trend continues, in 10 years, we're bankrupt. And we've got to get a hold of that. And Tennessee and the states are doing that, and we should be proud of that.
thank you, Glenn. Jeremy, any final comment here?
Just appreciate Charles's work on the budget. Appreciate you guys having us. I guess since this is the end of my 2-year term, I want to thank these guys for all the help they gave me. It was just a huge difference looking at the folks who didn't have a Charles, Jack, and a Glenn to go to when they needed a lifeline. I mean, it was huge whenever anything I had in finance, which is where bills go to die, I had Charles's ear. Anytime I needed a bill lobbied, I had Glenn. And then Jack, you've got one of the most powerful committee chair in the Senate. I believe because of the $50,000 sweeper that the Senate Commerce is probably the equivalent of House Finance in terms of notoriety. But I mean, just having these guys to work with made my first term a heck of a lot easier. And so I just want to thank those guys.
Appreciate all your service. Jack,
Well, I know we're out of
Final
time.
comment.
I wanted to touch on the toll thing. Back in my very first year in the General Assembly, we had a bill to just study the feasibility of a toll bridge that would have linked Hendersonville to Briley Parkway. It would have shortened the commute for people who live in Hendersonville to the airport from about 45 minutes down to about 20 minutes. I voted yes in committee just to study the feasibility of that one project. I thought I was going to get hung because I voted for that. There is no political appetite whatsoever in the state of Tennessee for toll roads. Having said that, though, so I don't see toll roads in our future ever in the foreseeable future. I do think that because of electric cars and people who are driving on our roads that are not paying the gas tax, we will ultimately see some type of a user fee, broad-based, for those people that are not contributing to the maintenance of our roads.
right, in 60 seconds or less, when are we going to be able to buy wine in grocery stores in Williamson County?
2016, where? Publix, Kroger's, MAPCO.
Okay, well, are we going to see some referendums here shortly to,
November, I believe. I'm looking at the county mayor. I think it's on the November. He's shaking his head yes. It'll be on the November referendum. You have to go out and vote for it.
Great.
Mayor Brentwood here.
That's, Ms. Betsy, is that going to happen in Brentwood? We are so thankful for you guys giving us FaceTime, helping us understand all these things that are so complicated, and just glad that Channel 3 and Newt and his staff give us the opportunity to discuss these things and dig into them a little bit and understand them better. and we appreciate all you do. We hope that as many of you as can will be back here on the 27th of May, unless we can talk Glen into doing it somehow. And again on May 8th. Again, we're going to look at the transportation needs in this county and talk about some of our options there. So glad you're with us. Hope you'll be back with us at our next meeting. Thank you very much.